welcome to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and on tonight's show, we'll be talking about money management, how to save it, how to spend it, and how to manage it. I'm excited to introduce our special guests to you. They're both financial planners and money coaches, and they're here to take some of the pain out of the process for us. And this time of year, we're all feeling that crunch right around the holiday season. First of all, we have Judith Kane, a sought-after financial expert who's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, and numerous other media outlets. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Barbara. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. And we have Janet Gray, who helps business owners and people both before and after retirement with their planning to reduce the worry and stress out of all things money related.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, before I get started, you brought some goodies to give away to our viewers.
Yes, we did.
So this is a fantastic piggy bank collection.
Well, it started out just as I like to give them away as gifts, you know, for draws. When people were saying, could you put a basket together? So I started out, and then I started finding them and I really liked them. So people started giving them to me, and now I have this piggy bank collection, and this is just a few of them that I have. But they make sense because they talk about things like saving for retirement, and there's another one I have that's for travel, and yeah, so it's a great way to save money and fun.
Yeah, so you're giving away a piggy bank tonight, and
yes.
Janet, you're giving away a book as well?
Yeah, we have a book that's called Unstuck. It's by the founders of Money Coaches.
Okay, awesome. So if you'd like a shot at winning those prizes, make sure you call the number on your screen, 613-728-2222. That's 613-728-2222, and all you have to do is be willing to come to the studio at 475 Richmond Road to pick it up. And stay tuned for another phone number to come up on your screen if you have any questions and you'd like to call in and speak to our guests. So the first question I wanted to ask you ladies is, what's going on? Why are Canadians in so much debt? I was just reading this study by Equifax that Canadians are more than 1.5 trillion in debt, and that's more than 21,000 per adult Canadian, and that doesn't include your mortgage. What's going on?
Well, you know, they always put these numbers out there to make them shocking. And let's remember that, you know, a lot of people have lines of credit that are manageable, that they're paying off, that they're paying down. So it's probably not as scary as it sounds, although Canadians are using more consumer debt than they used to. I think that's the bigger statistic, is that they're using, you know, there's much more available for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the lower interest rate environment too, it's certainly encouraged more spending. I mean, you can get 0% car loans. Your line of credit could be, you know, 3%. So it really plays to that. You need to spend it because it's almost free. Mm-hmm. So it's really creating this mental environment for people to want to extend their limits, their comfort zone, whereas maybe before they didn't.
Mm-hmm. I think people also don't look at it or they look at it as their money. So if they have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit on it, they look at it as, well, I've got $10,000 that I can spend, which is why I would like them to be called debt cards, not credit cards.
That's a good point.
Because that's really what it is. Once you've used your credit card, you now have a debt. So it should be called a line of debt or a line of,
yeah, because it's someone else's money. It's the bank's money that you are borrowing from the bank, creating a debt.
At a premium.
Absolutely. It's always in the bank's favor.
Right.
Let's talk about the different ways in which people use money. I'm not just talking about transactions, using money as a way to pay for things, but money is actually used to fill a hole in our lives. We might have insecurity, we might have mental health issues, we might have grown up in a household of poverty, and so we're using money to kind of validate ourselves, buy the things that we always wanted and never could. I'm wondering what kinds of patterns you ladies both see come up over and over again with your clients when it comes to the psychological and the emotional ways of using money.
Well, and I mean, it's true. We see it all the time. It's often around confidence. So people think by spending money and, you know, making them confident on the exterior, it will boost them and you know, get them past that job interview or living up to the neighbors or family expectations. So it often is a whole, it adds to their value of well-being. Whether that's right or wrong, but I think that's what a lot of people use it for.
Right, look good, feel good, right? If you look good, if you have your hair done at a very expensive hairdresser, if you wear very expensive makeup, if you go and shop at the expensive stores, then if you look good, it will make you feel good, but that's just for the moment. It's just for the moment. The minute you move away from the mirror, you'll probably feel those same feelings. And retail therapy is very similar to, you know, overeating, abusing alcohol, gambling. There are some people who actually have an obsession with shopping, and as we talked about earlier with online shopping, I mean, it can be very dangerous and it can be extremely financially detrimental to a family if you've got someone whose spending is completely out of control. I watched an episode of Hoarders once, and the woman's house was completely filled with objects and stuff that she had bought off of one of the online, channels and stores, and none of it had been opened.
She didn't even need those things.
No, the bags, the stuff was still in the bags or still in the wrappers. The price tags were still on. She hadn't used anything. So that's an illness. I mean, I think to that extreme, it's an illness much like alcoholism and gambling.
Is it sort of a power thing where, I have the power, I'm able to walk into this store and acquire this possession, and that matters more, that ability to acquire it and have it if I want it, that matters more than if I actually am going to use it later on?
I think it's having control. So if for some reason you don't have control on your life and you need something to be in control of, being in control of what you can buy is a big one. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, it's also exactly that. It could be that just that small little thing. Everything else is out of control, but you have the power, the control, the confidence again to go in and make that decision, whether it's again right or wrong.
Right.
But at that moment it feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
People say, those who say that money doesn't buy happiness just don't know where to shop. Do you think there's some truth to that?
No, not at all. Not at all. Money, if you talk to a lot of people who have money, I mean, Oprah's talked about it, some of the biggest names.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, Bill Gates.
He gives away a lot of his money.
He gives it away. Susie Orman, a lot of the people who have a lot of money will tell you that it doesn't matter, if they've got it. The guys who do the minimalist stuff, I mean, they have very little. It's just, I think we've become a generation of stuff. Everybody has to, everybody has to. The only thing I accumulate in my life is piggy banks. Everything else, we moved from a big house down to an 1,100 square foot house, and I'm still getting rid of stuff. Every day I go through my house and I look at something and I say, it's got to go. I just, I think George Carlin said it best when he said that, we'll fill up the space we have with stuff. If you move to a bigger house and it's empty, you will fill it up with stuff.
I love George Carlin.
I know.
He's great.
I won't say the 7 words here.
So do you ladies advise your clients to perhaps invest more in experiences than in possessions? I mean, I've certainly seen that in Europe where people will have small homes and modest cars, but they'll be out every night on the public square having a glass of wine and enjoying life and going to every show and that sort of thing. Is that a lifestyle that you think is probably healthier, more meaningful?
Well, that's kind of talking what you were saying about the minimalist experience.
Right.
It's not about how many possessions you have, it's about the life experiences you live and can share with those around you. So that, to me personally, that's much more precious than having another thing that collects dust and that I have to move to clean if I clean. Those kind of things. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think New York, Hong Kong, Beijing, a lot of Asia, they live in I have a girlfriend who's teaching in Hong Kong, and she owns a big townhouse, just outside of Toronto, and she's been there for 3 years, and I was with her a few months ago, and she said, when I come back, I'm not going to have that townhouse. She lives in a very small 2-bedroom apartment, and her bedroom is so small that she has to put her dresser on the windowsill. The windowsill is quite deep. That's how small her room is. And she said, you know what? I have no problem living like this. I have no problem living like this. I think we've become a society of must-haves.
I mean, it's amazing what you can get used to, right? I've also read that if you invest more in experiences than in possessions, it kind of frees you from the trap of keeping up with the Joneses. So,
Or the Kardashians.
Or the Kardashians. Your neighbors come up with a car, and then you feel like you have to get a better, flashier car. But if your neighbors say they went on a vacation to New Zealand, maybe they might have had a slightly more high profile or 5-star experience than you, but that's okay because you still have your memories that belong to you, right?
Well, there's this book called The Millionaire Next Door, and they've done this study, and they've said, who would you choose that you think might be a millionaire? Well, the guy with the fast car or the big house or the big holidays and stuff. No, it's the guys that are, wearing secondhand clothes, driving a 10-year-old car, that have money in the bank, that live in a very modest house, that have the big bank accounts because they live a modest lifestyle. They live within their means. Whereas the people often that have the large homes and the flashy cars are living past their means. They're the ones that are adding to that, $1 trillion that you were talking about of consumer debt that people have.
But who do you think is enjoying life more? The guy who's wearing secondhand clothes, or the person that has the large house and the flashy car?
Oh, that's a huge mindset change. I mean, there are people who, I have a friend who had 3 kids and they've grown up shopping at Value Village, and they could easily afford to shop in department stores, but they chose to help the environment and shop in Value Village so that they could have experiences. They've been to Italy as a family a few times because, one of the spouses is Italian. So they've been able to enjoy beautiful trips to Italy, and they don't care about the, what they get. I mean, and she gets amazing stuff at Value Village or, Salvation Army or any of the thrift shops. People are giving away such great stuff these days. Actually, I was listening to a radio show and they were talking about the price of thrift stores is going up.
Really?
Yes, this reporter went into a Salvation Army store and they had a couch there for $800.
Wow.
I know. So, I think it's just, everybody has just turned into this real capitalist, consumer-driven society, and it's costing people their lives.
And that brings me to a point that I wanted to make, is that money has a profound impact on our mental health, and I wonder how often things like depression and anxiety crop up in the clients that you're seeing that are financially struggling.
Yeah, we often see that with our clients. We keep a box of tissue on the table, truthfully, because people, as soon as they feel that they can unburden about their money, that their emotions come out, and they're tears and crying, and it's very sad. It can really put a weight on people's shoulders. It's very sad.
And so we help people take that weight off their shoulders. We, people come into our office and say, I'm so ashamed, I'm so embarrassed that I'm in this situation. I'm bright, I've got a master's, I've got a PhD, and I can't even manage my money.
I shouldn't be in this situation.
I shouldn't be in this situation, or here I am again, which is even worse for them. And we try to tell them that there are, millions of people who are in the same position, and it has nothing to do with the amount of education you have. As you said earlier, it has to do with how you were brought up. It has to do with the environment around you. It has to do with who you hang around with. I mean, people can be the catalyst for change. So if you start the trend of potluck and say, let's do a round the world potluck, then it's a great way to save a little bit of money instead of going out. How about doing an around the world potluck and everybody has to pick a dish from a different country?
It's also very much a stigma, right? People are like, shh, don't tell anyone I'm having money difficulties. They kind of slink in under the cover of darkness and hope that none of their neighbors will see them, because it still is very stigma to you want to project that confidence and that successfulness around your money.
You've got it under control.
Yeah.
You don't want to admit to someone that you don't have it under control, even though you're successful in all your other areas of life.
You made a very provocative comment when we were talking earlier. You said that your clients have an easier time talking about their sex lives than about money.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's very surprising to me.
Yes.
Does money really have that much stigma around it?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, think of just going to a party yourselves, or sitting in a pub and talking to friends. I mean, there's a lot of jokes and innuendos thrown, but never is money on the table. Let's talk about how much you make and how much debt you have. Like, they just don't do that.
I mean, it's easier for people to say that. To make jokes about not having sex. So girls sit around and they make jokes about not having sex with their partner. Oh my God, it's been weeks or months, or we haven't been to bed in so long. But they would never say, oh my God, I'm so in debt. My credit cards are maxed out, which is almost a more important conversation. We've often said that money and sex are kind of like the two reasons that people separate and divorce, is because these issues have become so painful for them that they can't be together as a couple anymore.
I just wanted to tell our viewers that we've actually got a new phone number for you to call in if you want a shot at winning one of these lucky piggy banks or a book on how to manage your money. The number is 613-759-8622. That's 613-759-8622. And as I mentioned earlier, you just have to come to the studio to pick it up at 475 Richmond Road. I want to go back to what you ladies said earlier about online shopping. And online shopping is kind of the new shopping channel. except it's available and accessible 24/7 on your smartphone or your laptop or your iPad, and retailers are making it really fun and 3D and interactive. I mean, I get emails all the time from sites like Beyond the Rack and My Habit and Net-a-Porter, and then you'll see 3D models, and you can, Janet, you even mentioned that there's some options where you can actually upload your photo.
Yep, you can put your face right onto a model, and then as they're modeling, your face is on it, so you can imagine yourself even more vividly choosing that dress.
In that body?
Yeah, well,
Awesome.
Sign me up.
That's true, yeah. Forget the dress, I just want the body.
Unfortunately, the body's not for sale, but they'll have 10 suggestions on accessories, or 9 people out of 10 who looked at this dress also looked at these 5 other dresses. Why don't you have a look here? And Judith, you mentioned that sometimes you'll sort of you'll have fun with the experience. You'll load your cart up with 10 different things, but you won't actually check out. And then you'll get an email the next day from the retailer kind of nudging you and saying, hey, did you forget to check out? Those items are still available. I mean, that's terrible.
Well, for me, it's because by the time you add in the exchange, wherever I'm buying it, and the shipping, it adds up to almost as much as in my cart. So it's just kind of the enjoyment of, I think I'd like to buy that, and I think I'd like to buy that. House is a big one for me. I go onto House and I look at, these beautiful couches that are $10,000, and go to the websites, and it's almost like browsing. Yes.
Window shopping.
Window shopping. Only you're doing it online. I remember when eBay first started, and it was really the first online store, and people would say, excuse me just a minute, my auction's almost running out, so I've got to get it.
I remember that.
And then they moved to buy now, so that you didn't even have to wait for the auction to finish. You could actually buy it if you wanted. Yeah, online shopping has become, I think, a disease because people are on their computers so much that it's just popping up everywhere. I was on Facebook, I was telling you, I was looking at something at Mountain Co-op, and I was on Facebook, and all of a sudden an ad appeared on from Mountain Co-op.
It's very similar.
They're watching you.
Exactly. Thanks, Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not interested.
It's very similar to online gambling,
Yes.
online sports gaming. Like there is so much technology has gotten so big and so everywhere that it gets into those areas of our lives, and spending money is an easy one because people just they buy on impulse.
Right.
They don't maybe mean to, but the transaction's done and gone, and then they realize, I
want to change my mind.
That was grocery money. What do I do?
Yeah, at least when you're shopping in a store, you can go and try something on, you can look at it, you can leave the store and come back. With online shopping, returning stuff makes it very difficult too, if you want to return something. So, it's a little different when you go into a store and buy something because you can take it back. But if you buy something online, it generally is a hassle to send it back.
Yeah, and then you have to ship it back. And by the time you get around to shipping it back, 2 weeks has gone by. You haven't got to the post office or UPS.
If you go on Kijiji, you find often people will, and on Facebook actually, I see notices all the time. I bought this online, I don't really like it anymore, so I'm selling it for what I paid for it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now we have a secondary economy.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. A secondary economy of regret.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You need more discipline than ever to walk away.
It's very difficult.
Do you think that online shopping sites should have warning labels the way cigarette packages do? Can lead to addictive behavior?
It can. I just think that, I think we're probably becoming too Big Brother when we do stuff like that. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, certainly they don't probably allow people under a certain age to buy anyway because they have to have a valid credit card and all that stuff too. But it would be anti-retail, I think, to do that. There'd be an uprising amongst the retailers.
Yeah.
And it really is, though, kind of buyer beware. I mean, just if you can resist, then just don't go on the site. I mean, it's kind of like, if you quit smoking, don't put cigarettes in front of me. If I can't gamble, don't take me to the casino. You really need to be conscious of what your own limits are and try and avoid them if you can. Chocolate for me.
Right, and exactly. When you're signing up for some of the online stores, don't sign up for the newsletters and don't sign up for the notifications. So it's your choice to go to that store, and then if they send you stuff, just unsubscribe, because now we have laws that they can't continue to send you things. So, there's that opportunity to kind of prevent things from going too far, and also planning ahead. I mean, if you have an account that's set up for clothing, if you want to shop online or go to a store or go shopping, check your bank account that you've got set up for clothing. And if you've got money in that account, then go for it. You know, so planning ahead is really what Jan and I do.
Well, we're just about to go to break, but when we come back, I want to hear more about what you ladies advise your clients who are part of a couple. Maybe one person's a spender and one person's a saver. They're all like that. So how do you get through that as a couple? Don't go away. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and on tonight's show, we're talking about money management. And we've got two special guests with us tonight, Judith Kane and Janet Gray, who are helping us take the pain out of the process. So I wanted to ask you ladies a little bit about, different personality profiles. So there are people in life who are givers, and there are people in life who are takers. And of course, we all get a lot of pleasure from giving, but then you have the takers who take advantage of that. So if you're the kind of person that's always being approached by someone to lend them money, or you're always being expected to pick up the bill because you're generous, because you're a nice guy, because you're a nice girl, how do you protect yourself from that? And how do you keep some of that giving nature and the feel good that comes out of it, but still protect yourself from people that take advantage, whether it's your family or your friends?
I've heard this quote, and I use it often with clients. Clients often fall into that game with their children. And the quote is, givers have to have boundaries because takers don't.
Oh, that's good.
So exactly that. If I'm willing to give, then I want to know, okay, well, this is my comfort area of giving, but past that, when I speak to a giver, I'm going to have to say no, because they're going to keep.
That's good.
Going to keep taking from it. So.
Yes, that's good. I like that.
Thank you. You can use that.
Okay, I will.
Do you find that a lot of your clients tend to be more of the givers rather than the takers?
Oh, I think that, when I get couples, they're quite different. They're usually quite different, which is why they're seeing me, because they're seeing us, because they can't seem to compromise, or they can't seem to get in touch, or they can't seem to talk about money. They'll do anything rather than talk about money. And so I think that, there are people who will take advantage of other people. There are people who let their kids, that's a big one, letting the kids take advantage of them. And so we just give them the choice. We don't make the decision for them. We just give them the choice and say, this is the life that you could have, or this is the life you're having right now. What would you rather have? And of course they want to have that life. Well, okay, you need to make some decisions then. If that's the life you have, then how do you think that you could support your children without giving them $500 a month, or whatever, whatever the issue is? And so, that I find that people tend to give their kids more than they used to.
Is that sort of the main source of the conflict within couples? It's the kids?
No, it's usually hardwood floor versus a boat.
Yeah, it's often like you were saying. It's kind of that if there is a spender and a saver, then the saver tends to think that they're more giving, and the taker tends to be the spender, because they're taking. So it's a weird dynamic, but usually there's a split in each couple.
And is there usually like a bad guy and a good guy, basically?
There's someone who manages the money and who worries about the shape they're in, and there's the other person who's completely oblivious to everything and sticks their head in the sand. And I tell them the only good thing that sticking your head in the sand will do is give you a lovely dermabrasion on your skin. But other than that, you need to be responsible to the person you're married to, and you need to come to the table and say, okay, while you can't have two people doing the finances, it just doesn't work. But you have to be respectful that the other person is doing it, and pay attention and acknowledge it, and understand what's going on, because that person might not be around forever, and you might have to be responsible for that.
It used to be in the olden days where the man was sort of in charge of the finances. He would pass away, And the woman would be left behind going, what do I do
Yeah.
now? I have
Where's the
no
checkbook?
idea.
Yeah.
You know, they
Where's
don't even, and I suggest, and I think you do too, is that couples have a meeting.
Right.
So they set aside a specific time once a month for an hour, only an hour, and they sit down and say, okay, what happened in our finances last month? What do we see coming up? And are we on the same page? Can we review our statements together? Are we talking the same language? Even though it's you who's looking after the money, it's good to communicate with that other person for precisely that reason, that they may not always be there. You know, you may not always be there to do the money.
Right. I laughed because I had a couple who said to me, we just can't find the time to have the meeting. That was one of the things that that was their relationship challenge, if you want to call it that. And they said, we just can't find the time. And I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, well, during the week we're working, but on the weekends we head to our cottage. And I said, how long is the drive to the cottage? And she said, 2 hours. And so I didn't say anything. I just waited for her for it to sink in, to make the connection. Oh, so I guess we have 4 hours on a weekend that we could be talking about money. Exactly. So now they have these great discussions when they're on the way to the cottage about, you know, money, because they're going to a happy place.
Yeah.
So they're in a good mood.
And do you think part of the reason is because they're sitting side by side, so they
Yes.
don't have to make eye contact?
Well,
really?
that's part of
They
it.
can't escape each other.
They can't
Yeah, they
escape.
can't
And they
jump
can't
out of a
escape.
moving
That's
car.
right.
Yeah.
They can't escape. They can't turn the radio on. And so I asked them to tell me how it went. You know, how did your money, you know, what did you talk about? What are some of the things that came up? And they, you know, she just talks about how much easier it is to talk about money now. They're not afraid to tell each other about, you know,
Sounds like
what's
a
going
first
on.
date. You kind of have to break the ice
Yeah.
and get past that
Initial
insecurity and that,
Yeah.
and just self-discover about each other, and then, oh, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. Let's keep talking about it.
It's like the first kiss. It's kind of painful because you're not sure what it's going to be like, and then it's like, oh, that's kind of nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that's one tip for couples, is
Yeah.
sort of set aside a time each month to talk about how your finances went. What are some other tips that you would recommend?
Be honest.
Yeah, really. Yeah, no lying. I mean, there's people that will, you know, who have shopping addictions or feel that they do, and they'll take the tags off and then just present it as if they've always had so they hide their shopping habits, and so, I mean, there has to be open communication.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, it needs to be there. You need to share.
And that often happens in the first meeting they have with us, where they're sitting by side and they're not looking at each other, and they have to give us all of their financial information, and you see some stunned looks. You see some stunned looks because people are now admitting what's going on.
Well, I think it's also just part of, you know, if one person's always doing the groceries and the other person has no idea that, you know, milk is that much, or
Right.
you know, the salmon that we had last night for dinner was how much.
Yeah.
So it really is just, you know, ignorance is bliss in some cases.
It's
but
so true.
It's, you know, it's not good to be ignorant.
Right.
You mentioned first dates, and I want to talk about some of the double standard that might exist around men and women. So if you're a man and you're taking a woman out to dinner on a first date and you're trying to impress her, and then you bring out the coupons to pay for the dinner, I don't know a single woman who's going to say, wow, he's really good with money, that's so attractive. Any woman I know would be appalled. She would say, he's cheap, he's tacky. What
Hang
is
on
this?
a second here. Why is it his responsibility to pay for the first date?
Well, if you've been brought up to believe that way, if you're old school, there are a lot of people who would attribute that to their upbringing.
I think that it's both. If it's a first date, you each have a responsibility to pay your own way. If you're kind of in the same snack bracket, and so if he wants to bring a coupon out, I mean, he asked you out. He was brave enough to ask you out, and if he is paying for yours, I don't have a problem with that. But you know what? Maybe I've been a money coach for too long. That I think that
I think that also kind of unfortunately caters to the whole image that women are not in control of their own money.
Right.
And I think that we're doing a disservice to, you know, children and girls in particular in talking about money and not allowing them to have their own identity around their money.
How do we figure out how to make it hot?
Yeah.
That a guy actually is concerned about his money.
Well, that's the thing, because being generous is a virtue.
Yes.
It's attractive. It's an asset. People are drawn to generous people.
Yeah.
Being cheap, being frugal has a negative connotation.
What if he uses a $50 Groupon coupon to pay for dinner, and he's given $50 to the Boys and Girls Club? Like if you knew that he used a coupon so that he could make a donation to the Boys and Girls Club, would you not go, huh? maybe that wasn't such a bad idea.
You're someone who's socially conscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's hot.
Yeah.
And that is hot. That's right. And if he looks like, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
What about cultural norms now? You know, there are cultural expectations around keeping up appearances, being a provider if you're a man, you know, picking up the bill, that sort of thing. Have you come across that in your work with your clients where, you know, it's kind of harder to shift away from those stereotypes when you belong to a certain culture?
I would, yes, some cultures are more, but it doesn't have to be a cultural thing. It just has to be a gender thing. There are still a lot of men that will, you know, want, and again, it depends who the spender and saver is, I suppose. But in what I've seen is that men are more reluctant to want to share their details around their money, whereas I think women are more forthcoming. It often is the woman in the couple that will contact us and initiate the conversation about having some difficulty with their money. The men are still a little bit more...
I can do it.
Yeah,
we
I
can
can
do
do
this.
it.
We
Yeah,
can take care of it. We can get out of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's more generational than it
Yes.
is cultural. I mean, there is cultures where you know what? In certain cultures, you might be surprised at who manages the money. You think that it's the man because maybe the wife is staying home with the kids and the man is out working, but in often case, the woman is the one who's managing the money. They're just taking it in and she's managing it. But I wanted to talk about generational because we have created a generation of people that have to have stuff instantly. When I was, you know, and you, when we were kind of growing up and when we moved on to young adulthood, there was no expectation that we were going to move. Our first home would be a giant 3-bedroom house with granite counters and stainless steel. I mean, we'd be lucky if we could move into a fixer-upper townhouse in not a very great part of town as our starter home. And when I bought my first house, the interest rates were at 15%. So we lived in a very sketchy area of town and still paid a huge amount of money. But it was a very small 2.5-bedroom with a, or 2-bedroom with a very small bathroom. It was 600 square feet on the main floor. So I think that we have created this generation of people who have seen their parents living like that, and they want to live like that at 25 or 30 years old, not realizing that their parents didn't live like that, that they moved into those houses when they were 45 years old. But the kids want it now. They want it instantly. And I think that that's causing a huge problem with spending in Canada. What do you think?
No, absolutely. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole consumerist
Right.
population too, and feeling is that, you know, I must have it now. I need it. I deserve it. Yeah, sorry, you don't deserve a holiday in South just because you've worked hard for 11 and a half months. I mean, but it's very much, we feed into that and we somehow feel entitled and justified in saying, you know, I want that, I deserve that big house because I went to school for 6 years.
Right.
So there's all kinds of justifications that are acceptable apparently to us, but yeah, it really creates a lot of spending problems and credit issues, frankly.
Yeah, cars, fancy cars,
Yeah.
you know, not buying. My first car was an Acadian. It was like this little tiny GM product that I think cost me $2,000 or $3,000, and it was brand new. And I drove that car. I think it was 15 years I drove it. Yeah, it didn't owe me anything. I'm driving right now a 2002 Toyota Corolla. So, and I'm having rust fixed on it because I think it's a great car.
It is.
It only has 100,000 kilometers on it. And you know what? Quite frankly, I don't care what people think of me by the car that I drive.
Right.
I care
But
that
that's
people
a
think,
lot of image issues that you grow out of, I think. You know, like, I mean, I was conscious, and you probably were too, you know, as a youngster, you know, you needed to have the latest makeup and you needed to have the latest outfits. And so it's an identity discovery. And I think once you get past that point where you kind of truly feel you are who you are, then, you know, so what about the fast car and maybe the big house? But by then I've already got the big house and had the fast car, and I'm now on my second fast car, and, you know.
yeah.
So it's kind of, it perpetuates.
Your
But
priorities shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
We downsized from a big
Yeah.
house to a little house because we just decided that we didn't need to live like that. It wasn't important to us. The creation of a home was what was important to us. We have a friend, a good friend, who just moved from a big house to a house that was a third of the size, and she said it was because they were living in a third of the house but paying for this big house and not feeling like she wasn't enjoying it anymore, and she wasn't, so they moved out to the country. They have acres and a small house, and they love it. They're on top of each other because there's 2 kids and a fiance, and it doesn't matter because it's really feeling like a home, and 3 dogs and a cat in a very small house, but it doesn't matter, you know. It's like they've moved beyond that, and I wish young people would look at this and say, maybe we should do it in stages instead of having to, you know, jump. Yeah.
I just want to remind our viewers tonight that if you have any questions for Judith and Janet, please call the number that's coming up on your screen, and they'd be happy to answer your questions tonight. I wanted to move along and ask you, where can you find some great deals and discounts? Should it be a rule of thumb to always ask for a discount? And do you have to be careful with that mentality, because then does it justify overspending? Just because it's a great deal doesn't mean you have to have it.
We were in a store together in Toronto, and it was a big major department store, and it was a pair of shoes, right? And on the shoes it said, "Save more, buy more," or "Buy more, save more."
Yes, buy more, save more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
the more you bought, the more you saved. Well, not really.
Not really.
So if you bought 2 pairs of shoes, it was this much you saved. But if you bought 3 pairs of shoes, it was this much you saved. And if you bought 4 pairs of shoes, and I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to encourage people to buy more, to save more, because if you don't have the money in the first place, you're not really saving anything.
But we're all caught into that. You know, you buy 1 can of salmon, it's $2, and you buy 2 and it's $3.
Well, that's different because you're eating that.
Yeah, but you still
But 4 pairs of shoes for $15
overspend is the point, right? You're still kind of spending that extra amount that you hadn't planned on spending because you feel like, ooh, you're getting a better deal.
And that's
so it must be better to get a deal.
Right, and that's why it's important to have a plan. Someone said to me they have such a hard time sticking to a clothing budget because they say, okay, I'm only going to spend, whatever it is a month. First of all, no one I know buys $100 or $200 worth of clothes a month. They don't go out and say, okay, I'm going out, and so that at the end of the year they've spent $1,200. Most people I know go out and do it in bulk purchases, right? So if you're going to do that, I think then it's good but you can save the money into your clothing account, and that's a really good way to plan for things.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people, when you're talking about clothing, kind of buy seasonally, right?
Right.
They go out in the spring, they go out in the fall, and they spend a little bit. But it's true, if you know what you have saved up, and then you spend, when you get to those buy one more and save more, oh, okay, I've got the money, so I think this is a good deal.
Right.
Or I won't because I want that item over there.
That's right. So when you're let's say that you had a clothing budget of, I don't know, $1,200 for the year, and you look at, someone goes through the year, and at the end of the year they've spent $1,400, and they're like, why can't I follow my budget? Well, because there was no restriction on your spending. There was nobody there saying, okay, you've reached $1,200, you have to stop now. Groceries is a big thing. Groceries is a huge thing. People say, I always overspend my budget. Well, you know what? If someone only gave you $200 in cash, and you had to buy your groceries with that, you did not have access to debit, you did not have access to a credit card, then you would only spend $200, because if you get to the cashier and she rings it up and it's $250 and all you have is $200 in cash, what happens?
You got to put something aside.
Exactly. So that's how people should manage their money. They should pretend that they only have that much cash, so that they won't buy more, save more. They won't overspend their budget. That's how we work. We get people to think about it, that they only have so much cash.
Do you think a big part of the problem is our reliance on plastic?
Yeah.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Truly what it starts with is having a conscious plan to spend. So we're not saying to people don't spend, we're just saying spend consciously, be prepared to spend. Don't overspend, but be prepared to spend a certain amount. So I don't even call it a budget, we call it a spending plan, because that takes some effort to create and your input, and we're not making it all dull and dreary. We're saying, put some fun stuff in there too, because a budget sounds like punishment.
It's like a diet.
Yeah, well, exactly.
hate that word.
You've been bad,
Yeah.
so we're punishing you and making
Yeah.
you follow a budget. Well, how long is that going to last?
Right.
But if you have good input and good information in your spending plan, then you're consciously spending, which is much different.
And if you track people say, well, I track everything that I spend. Great. So what that does is tell you what a loser you are every single month. It
Right.
tells you what a loser you are. Because
Yeah.
if you have a budget of $1,200 or, a month for groceries, or $1,000 a month for groceries, and you consistently go over that and you spend $1,100, $1,200, $1,300, you're always going over. By tracking that, all you're saying is, I am such a loser that I can't control my spending. So it's perpetuating that as
Makes you more
you
depressed.
talked about. That's right. As you talked about earlier, is your self-confidence and your ability to manage money. And
That emotional whip over and over again.
But if you limit the cash that is available, and you just, so when I put people on a money coaching plan, to start off, I actually put their variable expenses or their monthly expenses, I put them in envelopes. So entertainment, groceries, transportation, those kinds of things, alcohol, go into different envelopes. And once the money's gone, the money's gone. They can't pull it out of their debit or credit card or.
Yeah, and then they eat from their pantry for the last 3 days of the month because and we're all guilty of overspending. The new flyer comes out and I want everything on the front page because it's all fun and instant and interesting.
Oh yeah,
And
PC is the
colorful.
worst.
Yes.
PC is the worst. They've got all these new holiday things to try and frozen hors d'oeuvres, and you know what? You could make those hors d'oeuvres for a third of what the cost is to buy them. So it's nice and beautiful, and you know what? You should pin it up on your fridge because you know you want to make those, but you don't want to buy them.
Yeah. We're just about to head to break, but when we come back, I want to hear more about your ladies' suggestions on holiday spending. Christmas is right around the corner, and I think that's at the top of everybody's minds, so don't go away. When we come back, we'll be talking about Christmas and the crunch in the new year when the credit card bills come in.
Ooh, scary.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and we're talking about money management just in time for the Christmas holiday season, how to take some of the sting out of the process, and when we come back in the new year, how to keep your resolve up to sticking to a budget and managing your money. I mean, we've all seen it at the gym come January. You can't even get a parking spot outside. Come February, you can choose any treadmill you want, right?
Yes.
But let's start with Christmas, since that's just around the corner. You ladies have some tips about holiday spending.
Well, and absolutely. We talked about being, spending consciously, and that involves creating a spending plan. So you can do that even, at the bigger level, but also at the holiday level. So you can, list who you want to give presents to, and then what amount you think you're going to spend, and then track it, and then what was the exact amount you spent. So you may plan to spend 50, but you may spend 55, but you add up all those extras all along, and it could be an extra $500 that you've overspent over the whole life of the holiday.
Yeah. So set up envelopes.
Okay.
So if your kids, set up for each of the kids. Stockings are the biggest leakage. I call it leakage. It's like the kid version of latte factor. So you think, it used to be you could put a stocking together for $20, and if you don't want to buy junk from one of those, the
Dollar
stores,
stores.
then, and you really want to put some effort into it, then it might cost you more than $20. So figure that into the price of what you're cost of what you're spending on your kids. So I suggest putting money in an envelope for each of those things. Your food that you're going to spend, because people spend extra money on food. You're making shortbread, you're buying a turkey, all those hors d'oeuvres, all those fun things. Alcohol, you're doing hostess gifts, you're having people over, so your wine consumption might go up.
Should you have an envelope for unforeseen expenses?
No.
Okay.
You should know. We've put together a great tracking sheet, which is available. Is our information going to be online or?
Yeah. Well, you've got your email address and your website and your Twitter. So what's your website? What can people visit?
JudithKane.com. Mine's
JudithKane.com.
JudithKane.com, and you can reach Janet through.
MoneyCoachesCanada.ca.
MoneyCoachesCanada.ca. Okay.
So if you email either of us, we'll send you the holiday spending form.
Great.
But decorations, gift wrapping, photos, holiday food, holiday baking, holiday drink, other party supplies. So you might buy fancy toothpicks or wreaths. Yes, wreaths.
Christmas
Did you see
lights.
how expensive they are now?
Because it's not just
crazy.
decorating your Christmas tree. You might want to hang stuff outside
and your ugly
jazz it
sweater
up.
budget.
Ugly
Some people
sweaters.
want to go, buy an. I saw people at Mark's the other day, like almost beating each other up because they had a whole shelf full of ugly sweaters.
I miss that.
Really? So you have to put all of those things in an envelope, and then if you've covered all of that, there aren't any unforeseen.
Should you buy all that stuff at Boxing Day for the year after?
Yes.
If you remember where you put it in your house.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you have a budget again. So
Right.
you still want to have a budget. So based on this year's budget, when you go back and say, oops, I overspent, so next year I'm going to spend less. So if you have a fairly good idea what your budget was, then absolutely go and spend, $50 on the kids' stocking.
The problem is you've spent all your Christmas money, so you don't have any Christmas money in your envelope.
That's the thing. I mean, should you have a separate budget for Boxing Day, or if you happen to have some money left over from Christmas, that's your Boxing Day budget?
How many people do you know who have money left over from Christmas?
Not very
But
many.
here's what I would suggest. I would suggest for the first year doubling up.
Okay.
Okay, so if you decide that you're going to spend $500 on Christmas or $1,000 on Christmas, then try and save twice as much so that you have enough money to pay for this Christmas and enough to pay for next Christmas so that you can Christmas shop throughout the year. And continuing to save up money for the next Christmas. So once you have that first bundle of money, then you're ahead of the game.
You know, a concept that I like is called regifting. So you look at
Yes.
the presents that you got last year for Christmas, and sometimes if you really didn't like them, they're still in the original wrapper. So, so if you regift them to, obviously not the person that gave them to you, but
Try to remember
That
that.
would be bad.
with love, you pass it along. And so, I mean, that can work well. You don't always have to go shopping outside of your home to find things to give to people.
That's right.
You can regift things that are in really good shape and they don't know any better, and it works.
Yes,
But
because
does
they
that go
love it.
against the whole point of gift giving?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, I don't know. My girlfriends and I don't give each other gifts anymore at Christmas time. I go to stay with a couple of different friends, and so I bring them hostess gifts, really nice hostess gifts. But we don't buy Christmas presents for each other anymore because, you know what? We have enough stuff. We spend time together. I'm going to Toronto to visit a really good friend, and we're going to go see the movie Sisters because we are sisters from different mothers and, good friends, best friends. And so that's what we're going to do instead of... And we're going to go all out. We might have popcorn and a drink too.
And it's true, but it goes back to that whole experience, enjoying the experience rather than, it's and there's a lot of stuff popping up on social media. It's about the experience. It's about who you're with, not what you
right.
give. And
It's about wrapping yourself around the person as opposed to wrapping a gift for them.
Right.
which is very much in the spirit of
As long as you
gift
know
giving
them
and
and it's
Christmas.
not stalking.
Yeah. I want to move along to kids' expenses. And you mentioned, the first 3 months of the year are kind of the hardest. You've got, the fallout from Christmas, you've got the property tax bill coming in, and then you're planning to send your kids away to camp, which can be extremely expensive. So how do you navigate that potential minefield?
Well, again, have a plan. Know what your budget is. So if you know that you can only afford to save $200 a month for kids' activities, then $2,400 a year, that's what you've got to play with. If you have 3 kids, divide it by 3. If you have 1 kid, But you may have to choose which activities you want to support. And it may not be all of the ones that you want to support for them or that they want you to give to them. So you really have to have a discussion with your kids saying, we can afford banjo lessons, but we can't afford soccer.
It's always banjo.
So, there's always a choice, but I think you want to include the kid because, you may find out that that's okay, I didn't really like soccer anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have that discussion. If
And you
they're
can let
of
the
age.
child choose too. I mean, if they're of age, let them choose. I had clients coming in, very good incomes together. Close to $200,000 a year they made in income, but they never had any money, and they were maxed out in their line of credit and credit cards. And it turned out when we actually investigated and tracked their spending, because they do have to do some tracking so we can have somewhere to start, it turned out that they were spending almost $20,000 a year on their kids' sports. 2 of their kids were in the, competitive. By the time you add the tournaments, the cost of hotels, the gas, the food, all of that, and they kind of took that out of their family budget and didn't think of that. It was almost $20,000, and that's a lot of money.
It's a university education.
It is.
In one year.
It's also spending without any parameters either. They were just kind of, yeah, we'll pay for that. We'll go in that tournament. We'll go in that. We'll figure out where the money will come later.
Right.
And then the later happened that, oh my goodness, we've got our line of credits maxed, and now we can't go. And now
Right.
now we're embarrassed because we have to say, sorry, we can't go on the trip.
Yeah.
We have to tell the kid. And so
The guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It creates this whole
Yeah.
ball of snowball effect, which
Yeah.
if they kind of backed it up earlier, the kid would have said, nah, I'm okay to stay at home and
Yeah.
play on my Xbox.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the lesson that the kids are learning.
Yeah.
Right, the fact that the parents don't know how to manage their money, and so they're going to follow in that same mindset. Kids
Monkey
have
see,
no
monkey do.
exactly.
Yeah.
Kids have no concept of money. If you asked, and parents do, I want to do this experiment where I stand at the end of a checkout counter at a grocery store and ask people how much their groceries were, because most people, the cashier will say it's $68.43, and will that be debit or check or credit card? They tap it, they walk away, and I guarantee you by the end of the counter when they're wheeling away, if I said to them how much was your groceries, they
No
wouldn't
clue.
remember. And kids are seeing that, and it's so bad. I mean, the kids sometimes don't even see bills anymore or money
Yeah.
anymore, because when the parents say to them,
Yeah.
we can't afford this, they say, well, can you just use your card?
Yeah.
They don't have a concept of money.
We have about 4 or 5 minutes left before the end of the show tonight. Let's talk about some of the things that you've got here on the table, some of the exercises that you do with your clients.
Go.
I like this one.
Okay. That's a whole lot
Pair
of
of
credit
scissors
cards.
and a lot of credit cards.
Whose
in
credit
here.
cards are those?
Our clients.
Exactly.
Yeah, our
And
clients.
sometimes we see clients that have 5, 6, 7 credit cards, and often with all different institutions. And it's called simplify. It's called reduce the debt, reduce the temptation. Everyone needs 1 credit card, maybe 2. That's it. So if there's extra credit cards, then we talk about how to which best credit card suits you, which one is, do you need a work credit card, do you need a gas credit card, so we talk around that, and why do they have a credit card?
Right.
And why do they need a $40,000 limit on their credit card? That's a little crazy. So
You have it, you use it.
and it's very symbolic too, and very therapeutic to actually take that card and cut it up.
Oh, yes. Yes, those are happy tears when we do that.
I'm releasing myself from my shackles, right?
Exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly right.
Yeah. Tell me about this money jar. I'm
Okay, so
intrigued.
this is a great way to start saving money for your next year's Christmas budget. By the end of this project, you'll save almost $1,400. And it used to be you'd start with $1 on the first week in January, and $2 the second week, and $3 the third week. But we've turned it on its head and say, hey, no one has any money in December, as we spent it all on Christmas. Let's start in January. So $52 the first week in January, $51 the next week. And if you do that consistently each week with $1 the last week in December, you will have $1,372. So every year we start this 52-week challenge and see who can make it to the end. And it's hilarious because people use different methods. I know a woman who used her laundry detergent. She said because she was the only one who, her laundry detergent container, she cleaned it out, and that's what she used because none of her family does laundry. And so she figured it was really safe to do it in there. So, and we get updates from people on how they're doing and everything. So, it's a great way to save some money.
And then do they spend it at the end of the year? What do
Well,
they do with it?
most people use it as a trip. So they go on a trip. They know they've got $1,400. So that's a pretty good trip.
If you think of saving as just delayed spending, I think it takes some of the pain out of the process,
Well,
right?
and you really enjoy it. I had clients who went to Cuba and it rained for 3 days and they didn't care because when they came back, their trip had been paid for.
Yeah.
They'd saved up the money. They paid off. They had no debt when they came back. We've both had clients that have come in and they're still paying for their terrible vacation 6 months later.
That's true. Where they took the whole family and it cost $5,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had clients who were paying for an air conditioner in a house that they didn't even own anymore. They had to sell the house to pay off debts, but they didn't have enough to pay off the department store that they bought the air conditioner from.
Oh, I'm sure that didn't feel very good.
Nope, pretty lousy.
The flip side of it is after they work with us and go through the process, they are thrilled.
Yes.
And they didn't realize what a monkey on their back it all was, and the conversations they're now having and the good communication around their money, it's
And teaching their kids, they actually use cash, and so they teach the kids. They take the kids shopping and say, okay, you have to buy the groceries. So here's the money. I mean, the kids have to be old enough, but buy the groceries. You only have this much money. And oftentimes the kids are better at that than the parents are.
I'm
Yeah.
not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Ladies, we're almost at the end of our show. I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your
Great.
expertise. Our viewers are very lucky to have benefited from your tips.
It was great. Thank
how
you very
can people
much.
find you? Just go on your website and book a session?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We both offer complimentary consultations, so
Perfect.
30 minutes on the phone
Okay.
to at least get started. And you can, we're really friendly
Can you tell?
and helpful.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Join me here in the studio back on January 19 with my next show. This is my last show of the season, but be sure to come back next week to see my colleague Moni Dejeji's show. She'll be talking about how to write your life story or memoir. Thank you so much for watching us tonight. Have a great night. Thank you so much.